Tell us a little bit about the process. What's the first thing that happens when you're remodeling?
So when the remodel starts, obviously you get your permits, you get the plan solidified and the scope of work solidified.
Okay.
Having the scope of work stay the same is very important to keeping the budget the same and the schedule trucking along as it should.
So some people might not understand scope of work. Would you explain that, please?
Scope of work is basically everything that you're going to do to the house, down to the little minute details. What kind of trim you're going to use, what kind of doors, flooring. You're taking out this wall, you're adding this wall, what the kitchen's going to look like. All those things are the scope of work, and that's what you base your numbers off of.
And the term creeping scope means I started remodeling the kitchen, then I went to the bathroom, then the porch looked awful, and now my living room looks awful. So it can grow like Topsy.
It can, yep. And it always, in a whole house remodel, it always happens. It's just my job to minimize that as much as possible.
The first step is
demo.
okay.
So we come in, demo everything down to where we want it to be. And that's
Clean it out.
Yep, clean it out. Get, if you're replacing doors and trim, get the doors and trim off, flooring, walls, whatever you're changing, you demo it to a clean slate.
Next step?
Next step is framing. So any framing that needs to be done, you do the framing. The step after framing is you get your HVAC and plumbers in.
Okay.
They are the ones that are going to run the biggest stuff through your house. Trunk lines
Right.
for HVAC, pipes for plumbing. When they are finished, you bring in the electrician. The electrician does everything.
So everything
that.
is on a timeline. You can't have one before the other.
Correct.
And if one gets backed up, what happens?
If one gets backed up, say you're waiting on the HVAC, and they're a month out, then you really can't do anything. You can do, exterior stuff if the weather's right. You can do some of these things, but for the most part, the project stalls until that can get checked off the list, and then
It
you
never
move on.
happens, right?
Yeah, it happens. And now, with the environment we're in the Twin Cities and everywhere, from what I hear, everyone's busy. And it's
Super busy. There's a
very
real
hard to
shortage.
keep people to a schedule, and it affects, one trade can affect the whole project by a long time. I've waited, 2 months for a plumber before. That's a big stall in a, project.
And with each step, when you have the tradespeople and the licensed tradespeople, you have to have permits and then inspections afterwards, correct?
Correct. So going back to the process, you go, you get your electric, HVAC, plumbers. They have all their inspections, their rough inspections. Then we can do our framing inspection. Then we do insulation if it's needed. Get an insulation inspection, and once those are all signed off, then you can cover everything up with drywall.
Okay.
So then, once drywall is finished, you typically start with flooring. You'll do your tile, your hardwoods, whatever you're going to put in.
The carpet software.
Carpet is at the end. Yep.
Yeah.
So carpet can be at the very end. And then once the flooring's in, you do trim, doors, cabinets, vanities, set all that stuff.
The fun stuff.
Yep.
Tell us about the ceilings. What did you have to, in a house like this that have popcorn ceilings
Yes.
everywhere? How does that happen?
In Minneapolis, there's a lot of popcorn ceilings.
Which we
And
thought was a great idea for about a hot 5 minutes.
yeah, exactly. And so the process is basically getting it wet, scraping it down, getting it down to the sheetrock that's up there or plaster, and then typically 3 coats of mud, and then skim coating.
Okay.
And then, if you want to keep it flat is much more expensive and harder to do.
Because you can see every tiny flaw.
Exactly. So they have to
you
be
get some
perfect.
little texture where it's flat.
Yep. We call this knockdown texture, and
Okay.
it's a lot easier to. It looks good, and it's easier and cheaper to do because they don't have to spend as much time on it.
Terrific, terrific.
It hides more of the.
So the timeline that you have, it totally depends on the scope of the work and the house.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an average of what to expect?
It depends on, a lot of my work now is with retail customers that say, I just want my kitchen done.
Okay.
That's a totally different story than a whole house, obviously. And, most kitchen remodels take two months-ish.
Okay. That's a scary number. How do they eat?
Well, we try to get everything done to a point where, basically you tear out the cabinets, put the new cabinets in, measure for countertops, and that's about 2 weeks of
Okay.
time without water. And then you do all this backsplash and the trim and the, you know, around that. But we try to minimize the time without a kitchen for, you know, only a couple weeks.
With
But it's
4
hard,
kids,
it's not easy.
Somebody's got 4 kids,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yep, it's a very,
Turn the hose on outside the other day.
exactly.
Great.
But you know, a whole house like this, typically, you know, back in the good old days, I would say 3 months, but now that's it just can't be done. With you know, inspections, and the city inspectors are busy, trades are busy, it's more like 4 to 6 months.
So you're scheduling your trades,
Mm-hmm.
according to but you also have to schedule inspections and get permits. So it's
Correct.
3 steps: permits, scheduling your tradespeople, and getting inspectors back. So
Yep. And then they come back, you know, for the rough ends once we drywall, and then after paint and everything, all the pretty stuff is up, then we have them come back and do what their trim out. So the plumbers come and put the faucets on, the electricians come and hang lights, the HVAC guys come and put their, you know, their HVAC trim up on the walls, the grills and stuff. And then they each have their final inspections again. So they each have 2 inspections throughout the process.
Okay,
Then,
which is super time consuming as well.
it is, it can be. Typically they're really good at, you know, doing it quickly, but they're at the mercy of the city as well. You know, if they have a day off or they're backed up. Most, you know, a lot of places only have 1 inspector. That guy's on vacation for a week, you know, that kind of thing.
That's fine.
So you're at the whim of, or the mercy of the inspectors as well. And then we have a building, as a general contractor, we have a final building inspection when everything's done and pretty, and they basically check for health and safety things like, you know, smoke alarms, CO alarms.
Yeah.
You make sure, you know, the stairs are to code and that kind of thing.